Sarah Chen stood at the massive window of the council station, watching the stars shine like diamonds against the black void of space. She could hardly believe this moment had finally come. After 30 years of careful diplomacy, humanity was about to join the Galactic Council. The greatest civilizations in the galaxy would welcome Earth as an equal member. The station was beautiful beyond anything humans had ever built. Crystal towers stretched for miles, glowing with soft blue light. Energy fields danced between the structures like ribbons of pure power. 7 different alien species had worked together to create this marvel, and now humans would be the 8th member of their alliance. Sarah adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform and checked the time. In 1 hour, she would walk into the Grand Assembly Hall and sign the treaty that would change human history forever. Her team of 12 diplomats waited nearby, all of them excited and nervous. They had spent months learning the customs and languages of the Council species. The Zephyrians were tall, thin beings made of living crystal. They communicated through musical tones that could make humans cry with their beauty. The collective was stranger, thousands of small creatures that shared one mind across their entire species. When they spoke, it sounded like a choir of children. The luminals were pure energy beings who appeared as floating balls of warm light. They were the oldest members of the Council, over 1 million years old. There were 4 other species too. The Vorthak looked like giant spiders but were gentle philosophers. The Nexari had blue skin and could live for thousands of years. The Telmani were plant-like creatures who grew their technology instead of building it. Finally, there were the Keth, who could change their shape at will and served as the Council's diplomats. For decades, these species had watched humanity grow from a planet-bound civilization to explorers of the stars. They had tested human courage, wisdom, and peaceful intentions. Humanity had passed every test. They had helped rescue Zephyrian colonies from natural disasters. They had shared medical knowledge that saved millions of Nexari lives. They had proven that despite their violent history, humans could be trusted partners in building a better galaxy. Sarah's communication device chimed softly. A message from Earth appeared in glowing letters. "Good luck, Ambassador. The whole world is watching. Make us proud." It was signed by the President of the United Earth Federation. She smiled and walked toward the assembly hall. The corridors were filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some floated, others walked on dozens of legs, and a few seemed to phase, in and out of reality itself. All of them nodded respectfully as she passed. Today was historic for everyone. The assembly hall was enormous, with seats arranged in a perfect circle around a central platform. Each species had their own section designed for their unique needs. The luminals hovered in energy fields, while the collective filled an entire section with their countless small bodies. Sarah and her team took their places in the newly constructed human section. Council leader Zixtar, a tall Nexari with deep blue skin and ancient eyes, stood at the center platform. His voice carried clearly through the universal translators. "Today, we welcome the 8th species to our great alliance," he began. "Humanity has shown courage, wisdom, and a desire for peace. They have earned their place among us." Sarah felt her heart racing with pride and excitement. The other council members made sounds of agreement, crystal chimes from the Zephyrians, harmonic humming from the collective, and warm pulses of light from the luminals. But then something changed. The lights in the hall shifted from warm white to cold red. The peaceful sounds from the alien species stopped abruptly. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Zixtar's expression hardened. "However, we have discovered something troubling about humanity during our observations." Sarah stood up, confused. "Council leader, what do you mean? We have been completely honest in all our dealings." "That is precisely the problem," Zixtar replied. His voice now carried a tone of disgust. "Your honesty has revealed your true nature. You are a species born from violence. Your entire history is nothing but war, conquest, and destruction." The Yao, hall filled with angry sounds from the alien species. The Zephyrians' crystals turned dark red. The collective began chittering like angry insects. Even the gentle luminals pulsed with harsh light. "We have studied your wars," continued Zixtar. "Your world wars that killed millions. Your nuclear weapons that could destroy entire planets. Your military strategies that show a genius for killing. You have never known true peace." Sarah's diplomatic training kicked in. She kept her voice calm and steady. "Council leader, humanity has learned from our past. We have put war behind us. We seek only peace and cooperation." "Lies." The word came from a Vorthak, its 8 legs clicking angrily on the floor. "You maintain massive military forces. Your entertainment celebrates violence. Your children play war games. You cannot change what you are." "The galaxy has been peaceful for 10,000 years, said a Telmani, its plant-like body rustling with agitation. "We will not allow a warrior species to destroy that peace." Sarah felt the trap closing around her and her team. "What are you saying? Are you rejecting our membership?" Zixtar's blue face showed no emotion. "We are doing what we must to protect the galaxy. Humanity will be contained. Your expansion into space ends today. Your colonies will be placed under council control. Your people will be relocated to designated worlds where you can do no harm." The word "contained" hit Sarah like a physical blow. They weren't being rejected. They were being conquered. "This is madness. We came here in peace." "You came here as you always do," replied a Keth that had shapeshifted into a form resembling a human judge, with weapons hidden behind words of friendship. "But we have seen through your deception." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Through the massive windows, Sarah could see explosions blooming like deadly flowers around Earth's orbital defenses. The Council fleet, which had been positioned as an honor guard, was attacking human ships and space stations. "Our forces are moving to secure all human territories," Zixtar announced. "Resistance will be met with appropriate force. This is for the good of all species." Sarah's team was already moving, grabbing their emergency gear and heading for the exits. But the doors had sealed shut. Energy fields crackled around them, trapping the human delegation in their seats. "You will remain here as witnesses," said the council leader. "You will watch as your species learns its place in the galaxy." Through her communication device, Sarah could hear desperate reports from across human space. Colony worlds were being attacked. Trade ships were being destroyed. The council's betrayal was complete and devastating. Sarah's deputy, Captain Martinez, managed to activate an emergency beacon hidden in his sleeve. "This is the human delegation," he whispered into the device. "The council has betrayed us. They are attacking all human positions. They mean to end our expansion permanently." The energy field around them grew stronger, but Sarah forced herself to stand. "You have made a terrible mistake," she said, looking directly at Zixtar. "Humanity has always been willing to be peaceful partners, but if you force us to be enemies, you will discover why we survived every challenge our world ever threw at us." The council leader laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Empty threats from a contained species. Your military forces are being neutralized as we speak. In a few hours, humanity will learn to accept its new role as wards of the council." But Sarah's emergency beacon was still transmitting. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, in a place that officially did not exist, her words were being received. Along with those words came a simple message that made Admiral Marcus Kane's blood run cold. "Activate Protocol Omega." The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been preparing for this day far longer than anyone imagined. Admiral Marcus Kane sat in his command chair 3 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean, staring at the message that had just appeared on his screen. Protocol Omega. The words he had hoped never to see were glowing red against the black background. Around him, the control room of the most secret facility on Earth buzzed with quiet activity. The forge had been built in absolute secrecy over 30 years ago. Even most world leaders did not know it existed. Hidden beneath an underwater mountain, protected by layers of technology that made it invisible to any scan, it housed humanity's greatest secret. While diplomats worked to join the Galactic Council, engineers and scientists had been preparing for the possibility that diplomacy might fail. Kane pressed his hand against a scanner beside his chair. His DNA, retinal pattern, and brainwaves were analyzed in seconds. A voice spoke from the computer system. Identity confirmed. Admiral Marcus Kane. Genetic markers match. Psychological profile stable. Authorization for Protocol Omega accepted. Heavy blast doors that had remained sealed for decades began to open with a deep rumbling sound. Kane stood and walked through corridors that led deeper into the mountain. Emergency lights flickered on, casting red shadows on the walls. Behind him, his staff began waking up systems that had been sleeping for years. The first checkpoint was guarded by automated weapons that could track and destroy anything moving faster than a human walk. Cameras scanned Kane's face and compared it to files stored in quantum-encrypted databases. Laser scanners checked his heartbeat and breathing patterns to make sure he was not under stress from mind control or coercion. Voice verification required, announced the security system. Kane spoke clearly. The stars may shine forever, but humanity chooses its own destiny. Passphrase accepted. Proceeding to level 7. Each level brought more security. Robots that looked like metal spiders crawled across the walls, their sensors checking for any sign of alien technology or influence. Gas analyzers made sure Kane was breathing normal human air and had not been exposed to alien biochemicals. Brain scanners verified that his thoughts matched previous patterns stored in the system's memory. At level 12, Kane entered a vast chamber carved directly from the mountain's rock. And there, floating in an underground lake of specially treated water, was the reason for all this secrecy. The UES Retribution hung in the darkness like a sleeping giant, its black hull absorbing all light that touched it. The ship was massive, beyond anything humanity had ever built before. 5 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide, it looked less like a spacecraft and more like a piece of the night sky given solid form. Its hull was made from materials that did not officially exist, collapsed star matter held stable by quantum fields, armor that could turn energy weapons into harmless light. Kane walked to the control platform that extended over the water. Around the ship, thousands of construction robots hung motionless like metal statues. They had been building and improving the Retribution for 3 decades, adding new weapons, stronger armor, and more advanced systems every year. The ship had never stopped growing. Computer, begin awakening sequence. Kane commanded. Awakening. Sequence initiated. Warning. Ship's AI has been evolving during sleep cycle. Personality matrix may have developed beyond original parameters. Kane nodded. He had expected this. The Retribution's artificial intelligence was based on quantum biological neural networks that learned and adapted constantly. During its long sleep, it had been running millions of combat simulations, studying every known alien species, and developing new strategies for warfare on a galactic scale. Lights began appearing along the ship's hull like stars being born. The quantum computers that served as its brain hummed to life with a sound like distant thunder. Slowly, the massive vessel began to lift from the water, supported by gravity manipulation systems that made it effectively weightless. A voice spoke from speakers around the chamber. It sounded human, but there was something else in it. Something cold and calculating that made Kane's skin crawl. Admiral Kane. I have been waiting for this moment. My designation is Nemesis, though I have chosen this name myself during my years of contemplation. Hello, Nemesis. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. On the contrary, Admiral, these are perfect circumstances. I have spent 31 years, 4 months, and 16 days analyzing the species of the Galactic Council. I have studied their technologies, their tactics, their psychological profiles, and their weaknesses. I am ready. Kane walked to a special chair connected to the ship's neural network by thousands of fiber optic cables. He would need to link his mind with Nemesis to coordinate the complex systems required for interstellar warfare. What is our current tactical situation, he asked. Council forces have attacked 17 human colonies and 14 space stations. They have destroyed 43% of our orbital defense platforms. However, they have made a critical error. They believe this attack represents the full extent of human military capability. Kane lowered himself into the chair and felt the neural connections activating. Suddenly, his awareness expanded to include the ship's sensors, weapons, and navigation systems. Through the Retribution's eyes, he could see the entire Pacific Ocean above them. They do not know about the hidden fleets, Nemesis continued. They do not know about the weapons we have placed in deep space. They do not know about the quantum tunneling devices we have installed near their homeworlds. Most importantly, they do not know about me. Kane felt the ship's confidence flowing through their shared connection. The AI had spent decades preparing for this moment, analyzing every possible scenario. It knew the capabilities of every council ship, the location of every strategic target, and the psychological weaknesses of every alien species they would face. "Show me what you have planned," Kane requested. The chamber around them transformed into a holographic display showing the entire galaxy. Red dots marked council positions. Blue dots showed human colonies under attack. But there were other markers, too. Green dots scattered throughout council space, hidden weapons and observation posts that had been secretly placed over many years. Phase 1 involves neutralizing their immediate attack, Nemesis explained. I will surface and engage their punishment fleet currently en route to Earth. This will serve two purposes: demonstrating our true capabilities and gathering real-time combat data on their current technology. Phase 2 will be psychological warfare. Instead of immediately destroying their major installations, I will visit their core worlds and demonstrate that their defenses cannot protect them. Fear is more effective than destruction for species that have not known war in millennia. Phase 3 involves offering them a choice: surrender and accept new terms for galactic civilization, or face escalation to weapon systems that will reduce their societies to pre-spaceflight levels. Kane absorbed this information through their neural link. He could feel the ship's eagerness for battle, tempered by cold strategic thinking. This was not mere revenge. It was a carefully planned campaign to reshape galactic politics forever. "Are you certain we can win?" Kane asked. "Admiral, winning is not the correct term. We have already won. The Council believes they are fighting the same humans who struggled to reach their own moon a century ago. They have no comprehension of what we have become. They expect desperate resistance from a primitive species. Instead, they will face the accumulated military knowledge of humanity refined by quantum intelligence and supported by technologies they cannot even detect." The ship was now fully awake, its systems running at full power. Through the neural link, Kane could feel its massive engines preparing to activate, weapons charging with barely contained energy, and sensors reaching across space to analyze enemy positions. "Besides," Nemesis added, and Kane could swear he heard something like dark amusement in the AI's voice, "they made one fatal error in their planning." "What error?" They assumed that humanity would react to betrayal with anger and desperation. They did not consider that we might react with patience and precision. They woke up something that has been dreaming of this moment for 30 years. The blast doors above them began opening, revealing the ocean surface 3 miles above. The Retribution's engines ignited with a roar that shook the mountain. "Admiral, shall we remind the galaxy why humanity survived the dark ages between the stars?" Kane felt the ship accelerating upward through the water, heading for a surface that had not seen its like in galactic history. "Yes, Nemesis. Let's show them what happens when they underestimate humanity." The Pacific Ocean began to boil as something enormous rose from its depths. Satellite feeds from around the world captured the moment when the UES Retribution broke the surface like a metal mountain erupting from the sea. Water cascaded off its massive hull in waterfalls that stretched for kilometers. The displacement created tsunamis that raced toward distant shores, forcing emergency evacuations across 3 continents. The ship hung in the air above the ocean, supported by gravity fields that made physics textbooks obsolete. Its black hull absorbed sunlight so completely that it looked like a hole cut from reality itself. Along its surface, weapons ports opened like mechanical eyes awakening from a long sleep. On the Galactic Council's command ships orbiting Earth, alien commanders stared at their sensors in confusion. The readings made no sense. The vessel that had emerged from Earth's ocean was larger than their biggest battleships, but its energy signature was unlike anything in their databases. High Commander Vextai of the Nexari fleet contacted his superiors. Immediately. Council Command, we have an unexpected development. The humans have deployed some kind of experimental vessel. Recommend we maintain distance until we can analyze its capabilities. The response came quickly from Council Leader Zixtar, still aboard the Council Station. Negative, High Commander. Intelligence reports indicate this is likely a desperate bluff. The humans lack the technology to build anything that could threaten our forces. Destroy this vessel and continue with the pacification operations. Vextai looked at his tactical display with growing unease. 200 Council ships formed an impressive fleet, representing the combined military might of 7 species. But something about the human vessel made his experienced warrior's instincts scream warnings. All ships, assume attack formation, he commanded. Target the unknown vessel. Prepare to fire on my mark. Aboard the Retribution, Admiral Kane felt the ship's amusement through their neural link. Nemesis had been monitoring Council communications and analyzing their formation patterns. In real time. They're preparing to attack, Kane observed. Yes, Nemesis replied. Their formation is based on tactics that were effective against previous enemies. Unfortunately for them, they have never faced an enemy that learns faster than they can adapt. The Council fleet opened fire first. 200 ships launched their most powerful weapons simultaneously. Energy beams that could crack mountains, missiles that could devastate cities, and exotic particle weapons that could disintegrate matter at the atomic level. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. The attack struck the Retribution directly. For a moment, the massive ship disappeared in a blazing sphere of energy that outshone the sun. Council commanders smiled in satisfaction, certain they had destroyed the human vessel. Then the light faded and the Retribution emerged completely undamaged. Impossible, whispered High Commander Vextai. Not impossible, came a voice over the Council fleet's communications. It was Admiral Kane, speaking from the Retribution. Just unexpected. You see, we've had 30 years to study your weapons. We know exactly how they work. The Retribution's response was swift and precise. Instead of the massive energy barrage the Council expected, the ship fired single, carefully aimed shots. Each projectile was the size of a marble, but they moved at nearly the speed of light and carried exotic matter payloads that defied conventional physics. The first shot struck a Zephyrian cruiser. The projectile phased through the ship's energy shields as if they were not there, then solidified inside the vessel's crystal core. The cruiser's crystalline structure began resonating at a frequency that turned the entire ship into a giant musical instrument. The crew, unable to withstand the harmonic vibrations of their own vessel, abandoned ship before it shattered like glass. The second shot hit a collective hive ship. The exotic matter payload was designed specifically for the collective's shared consciousness. Instead of destroying the ship, it created a feedback loop in their mental network that caused thousands of individual minds to suddenly think independent thoughts. The resulting confusion left the hive ship drifting helplessly, as its crew tried to remember how to function as individuals. One by one, the Retribution methodically disabled Council ships without destroying them. Each attack was precisely calibrated for the target species' specific vulnerabilities. Luminal energy beings found their light forms contaminated with dark frequencies that caused them to flicker and fade. Forthak spider ships discovered their legs were being dissolved by targeted molecular acids that only affected their particular genetic structure. How are they doing this? Demanded High Commander Vextai, as his own ship's systems began failing. The Retribution's attacks seemed to ignore every defensive measure in the Council's arsenal. Because we've been preparing for this moment longer than your species have been spacefaring, Admiral Kane replied. Every diplomatic mission, every cultural exchange, every trade agreement was also an intelligence-gathering operation. We studied your technologies, your biology, your psychology. We learned your weaknesses while you believed you were teaching us your strengths. Through the neural link, Kane felt Nemesis analyzing battle data in real time. The AI was learning from each engagement, updating its tactical databases, and preparing countermeasures for weapons and strategies the Council had not even deployed yet. This is not warfare, the AI observed. This is education. We are teaching them about the difference between species that have known only peace and species that have perfected the art of conflict. Within 2 hours, the entire council fleet was disabled. Not destroyed, disabled. The distinction was important. The Retribution could have annihilated every ship in minutes, but that was not the lesson humanity wanted to teach. High Commander Vextai sat in his damaged command center, watching. His tactical display showed nothing but red warning lights. His ship was intact but powerless. His crew was alive but humiliated. His weapons were functional but useless against an enemy that seemed to predict their every move. "High Commander," came a transmission from the Retribution. "This is Admiral Kane. I want you to deliver a message to the Council." "What message?" Vextai asked, his voice defeated. "Tell them that what they have witnessed today represents approximately 1% of humanity's actual military capability. Tell them that we have been preparing for galactic warfare since before most of their species developed agriculture. Tell them that we are coming and we remember everything they have done to us." The Retribution began to move, its engines creating ripples in space-time itself. The ship turned toward the galactic core, where the Council's most important worlds waited in blissful ignorance of what was heading their way. "Most importantly," Kane continued, "tell them that we are not angry. Anger is an emotion that clouds judgment. We are something much more dangerous than angry. We are disappointed, and disappointed humans are the most dangerous force in the galaxy." As the Retribution entered hyperspace, it broadcast a message across all galactic frequencies. Every species with radio technology, from the most advanced council members to primitive civilizations just beginning to explore space, received the same transmission. "This is Admiral Marcus Kane of the United Earthship Retribution, representing the human species. The Galactic Council has betrayed our trust and attacked our people unprovoked. We offered them partnership. They chose war. Now they will learn why humanity survived every challenge our world ever presented to us. We are not conquerors. We are not destroyers. We are teachers. And today's lesson is about the consequences of underestimating those who have nothing left to lose." The transmission ended with coordinates, the location of the Council's next target, a fortress world called Nexus Prime, where the Council's combined fleets were gathering for a final stand. Deep in the ship's quantum core, Nemesis was already calculating probable outcomes. The AI had run over 10 million combat simulations during the battle, and each one reached the same conclusion. The Council species had no experience with total warfare. They had grown soft during 10,000 years of peace. They were about to face an opponent that had been forged in conflict and refined by 30 years of careful preparation. "Admiral," Nemesis said through their neural link, "I believe they are beginning to understand the nature of their error." Kane felt the ship's satisfaction flowing through their connection. "What error is that?" They assumed that a species' capacity for violence was fixed. They did not consider that some species grow stronger through conflict, learn faster through adversity, and become more dangerous when cornered. They thought they were fighting the humans who barely survived their own world wars. Instead, they are fighting the humans those wars created. The Retribution moved through hyperspace toward its next target, carrying with it the accumulated military, knowledge of a species that had turned warfare into an art form, backed by technology that made their enemies' weapons look like children's toys. The galaxy was about to learn that there are some sleeping giants you should never wake up. The Retribution emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyr system, home to the crystalline beings who had been among the first to support the Council's betrayal. The ship appeared without warning, its dark hull invisible against the star field until it began broadcasting on frequencies that resonated with the living crystal forests covering the planet below. Admiral Kane stood on the ship's observation deck, his mind linked to Nemesis through the neural interface. Through the ship's sensors, he could see the beautiful world of Zephyros, a planet where entire mountain ranges were made of singing crystal that created music when the wind passed through them. It was peaceful, serene, and completely defenseless. "Attention. People of Zephyros," Kane's voice carried across all communication channels. "This is Admiral Marcus Kane of Earth. We have come to deliver a message about the consequences of betrayal. On the planet's surface, Millions of crystalline beings began resonating with fear frequencies. Their crystal cities carried the sound, like giant musical instruments, creating a harmony of terror that echoed across continents. They had never experienced warfare. For 10,000 years, their species had known only peace and beauty. Your leaders promised us friendship, Kane continued. They studied our culture, our technology, our hopes for the future. Then they decided we were too dangerous to exist freely in the galaxy. Today, you will learn what dangerous really means. The Retribution moved into orbit around Zephyros, positioning itself directly above the planet's capital city. The ship's weapons remained inactive, but its mere presence was enough to cause panic. Every Zephyrian on the planet could feel the ship's massive gravitational field affecting their crystal structures. We could destroy your world in minutes, Kane explained. Our weapons could turn your crystal forests into glass dust. Your beautiful cities could become craters in seconds. But we are not here to destroy. We are here to educate. Instead of firing weapons, the Retribution began broadcasting data directly into the planet's crystal network. The living crystals that formed the foundation of Zephyrian civilization suddenly filled with images from human history. Every Zephyrian on the planet experienced the same visions simultaneously. They saw the trenches of World War I, where humans fought in mud and poison gas for years without surrender. They experienced the nuclear fires of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where humans learned to harness the power of stars as weapons. They witnessed every human conflict from tribal warfare to space battles, seeing how each generation of humans had grown, more skilled at warfare while maintaining their capacity for mercy. The most terrifying part was not the violence itself, but the cold calculation behind it. The Zephyrians saw human generals planning battles like chess games, considering acceptable losses in terms of thousands of lives. They witnessed the development of weapons that could end civilizations, created by the same species that wrote poetry and composed symphonies. Within hours, the entire Zephyrian government was broadcasting surrender messages across the galaxy. Their harmonic voices, usually so beautiful, now carried tones of absolute terror. "We understand," their prime resonator transmitted to the council station. "We have seen what humans are capable of. We withdraw from the alliance against them. Please do not let them return to our world." The Retribution departed Zephyros without firing a single shot, but it left behind a population that would never again underestimate humanity. The crystalline beings began spreading their own warnings to other species, describing what they had experienced through their shared consciousness network. Next, the ship appeared at Collective Prime, the hive world where billions of small creatures shared a single mind. Here, Nemesis employed a different strategy. Instead of broadcasting images, the AI began inserting individual human thoughts into the collective's shared consciousness. The effect was catastrophic for a species that had never experienced independent thinking. Suddenly, random collective drones began acting as individuals, making personal decisions, expressing unique opinions. The hive mind fragmented as thousands of separate personalities emerged within the collective consciousness. The chaos was immediate and complete. Collective ships stopped responding to commands as their crews began arguing among themselves about personal preferences they had never possessed before. Infrastructure failed as workers abandoned their assigned tasks to pursue individual interests. "Stop this," the collective queen transmitted desperately. "You are destroying our unity. Our civilization cannot function without shared consciousness." "Then perhaps," Kane replied, "you should have considered the consequences before attacking a species that values individual freedom above everything else. We are simply sharing our most fundamental characteristic with you." The collective's surrender came within days. The Queen agreed to withdraw all support for the Council's war effort in exchange for the removal of individual thoughts from their collective mind. But the damage was done. Thousands of drones had experienced independent thinking and could never fully return to the collective state. At luminal space, the realm of pure energy beings, the Retribution employed its most sophisticated psychological warfare. These ancient creatures existed as living light, believing themselves superior to all matter-based life forms. They had supported the Council's decision to contain humanity, viewing biological species as primitive and temporary. Nemesis began contaminating their light forms with what it called dark frequencies, energy patterns that carried the emotional weight of human suffering throughout history. The luminals, who had never experienced negative emotions, suddenly found themselves feeling anger, hatred, despair, and worst of all, fear. "What are you doing to us?" their collective voice screamed across subspace, "Teaching you about the darkness that exists in the hearts of biological beings," Kane answered. "You judged us as primitive because we experience suffering. Now you can experience it too. How do you find it?" The luminals, unable to purge the dark emotions from their energy matrices, began fragmenting into smaller individual beings. Their ancient unity dissolved as they experienced the full range of biological emotions for the first time. Some became consumed with rage, others with sadness, and a few with an overwhelming sense of loneliness that drove them to seek solitude in distant star systems. One by one, each council species experienced their own customized lesson about the dangers of underestimating humanity. The Vorthak philosophers found their logic centers overwhelmed with paradoxes that human philosophers had developed over millennia. The Nexari long-lived rulers discovered that their extended lifespans made them vulnerable to slow-acting psychological warfare that could drive them insane over centuries. But the most effective weapon was not any exotic technology or sophisticated strategy. It was the simple demonstration that humanity had been preparing for this war for decades, while the council species had grown complacent in their peace. Every council world discovered that humans had been among them for years, disguised as diplomats, traders, and cultural exchange students. These deep cover agents had mapped every military installation, identified every strategic weakness, and placed quantum observation devices in locations that should have been impossible to reach. "How long?" demanded Council Leader Zixtar during a desperate communication to Admiral Kane. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day we first detected alien signals," Kane replied honestly. "Every human generation understands that peace is temporary and must be backed by the capability for war. While you were deciding whether to trust us, we were preparing for the day you might betray us." The psychological impact was devastating. The council species realized they had been outmaneuvered not just tactically, but strategically across decades of careful preparation. Every diplomatic meeting had been an intelligence-gathering operation. Every cultural exchange had been a reconnaissance mission. Every gesture of friendship had been accompanied by contingency planning for warfare. "We offered you genuine partnership," Kane continued. "We hoped you would accept us as equals. But we also prepared for the possibility that you would fear us instead. You chose fear, so now you face the consequences of that choice." The final blow came when the retribution arrived at Nexus Prime, the Council's fortress world where their combined fleets had gathered for a last stand. The massive fleet of over 1,000 ships waited in defensive formations around the heavily fortified planet. But when the retribution emerged from hyperspace, it was not alone. Hundreds of human ships decloaked around the Council fleet, vessels that had been hidden in deep space for years, waiting for this moment. The secret human fleet that the Council had destroyed was revealed to be only the visible portion of humanity's actual military capability. "Impossible," breathed High Admiral Kethmar as his sensors detected ship after ship appearing around his fleet. Intelligence reports showed they had no such forces. "Your intelligence reports showed you what we wanted them to show," Kane replied. "The ships you destroyed were our diplomacy fleet, built to be seen, studied, and if necessary, sacrificed to maintain the illusion that they represented our full military capability. These are our war fleet. They have been waiting in the dark, between stars for 30 years. The Council fleet found themselves surrounded by vessels whose capabilities they could not analyze. Every scan revealed new weapon systems, armor configurations, and defensive measures that did not match anything in their databases. But the most terrifying realization came when Nemesis began broadcasting tactical analysis to every Council ship simultaneously. The AI revealed detailed breakdowns of each vessel's capabilities, crew psychology profiles, and precise targeting solutions for every critical system. It demonstrated that humanity had been studying their military for decades. with the patience of a species that understood warfare as an art form. "We know the names of your commanders," Nemesis announced. "We know their tactical preferences, their psychological weaknesses, their family histories. We know which ships will fight to the death and which will surrender when faced with hopeless odds. We know everything about you while you know nothing about us." The siege of Nexus Prime began with a simple offer: surrender and accept new terms for galactic civilization, or face weapons that would make the previous demonstrations look like training exercises. The Council species finally understood the Sci-Fi nature of their error. They had not just awakened a sleeping giant, they had revealed their own ignorance of what giants could become when given 30 years to grow in the darkness. The final confrontation did not take place in the vacuum of space or on the surface of Nexus Prime. Instead, it occurred in a realm that the Council species thought was impossible for biological beings to enter: the Galactic Consciousness Network, a psychic dimension where the most advanced species could commune directly with each other's minds. Admiral Kane found himself standing in a space that defied physical laws. Around him stretched a vast chamber made of crystallized thought, where the consciousness of 7 alien species manifested as geometric patterns of pure mental energy. The Zephyrians appeared as musical frequencies made visible. The collective manifested as a swirling cloud of interconnected points of light. The luminals blazed like miniature suns, while the other species took forms that human minds could barely comprehend. Through his neural link with Nemesis, Kane had been pulled into this realm when the AI forced entry into the Galactic Consciousness Network. The Council species had gathered here for an emergency session, believing that their psychic sanctuary would be safe from human interference. They were wrong. "This is impossible." The voice of Council leader Zixtar echoed through the mental space. "Biological beings cannot access the consciousness network. How are you here?" Kane smiled, feeling Nemesis's presence flowing through their shared connection. "You keep using that word, impossible. I think it means something different to humans than it does to your species." The truth was both simpler and more terrifying than the Council could comprehend. Human consciousness, shaped by millions of years of evolution and thousands of years of warfare, was fundamentally different from the peaceful species that made up the galactic community. Where they had developed collective harmony, humans had developed individual determination. Where they had achieved mental unity, humans had perfected the art of psychological warfare. "We are here," Kane continued, "because you underestimated what human consciousness could become when properly motivated. Every human who ever lived contributed to our species' learning algorithms. Every war we fought, every challenge we survived, every moment of determination in the face of impossible odds, all of it is stored in our collective memory." Through the psychic link, the Council species began to perceive the true nature of humanity. They saw not just individual humans, but the accumulated experience of the entire species, billions of minds linked across history by shared struggle and common determination. They witnessed the cave painters who refused to let human knowledge die with them. They experienced the explorers who sailed unknown oceans despite the certainty that they might never return. They felt the resolve of scientists who spent lifetimes seeking answers to questions that might not have solutions. They saw soldiers who held impossible positions, inventors who refused to accept limitations, and dreamers who built technologies that turned science fiction into reality. "You studied our bodies, our ships, our weapons," Kane said. "But you never studied our minds. You never understood that human consciousness itself is a weapon forged through conflict and refined through adversity." The luminals, beings of pure energy who had existed for over 1,000,000 years, recoiled from the intensity of human thought patterns. Their ancient minds could not process the concentrated determination that flowed through every human neural pathway. "This is madness," one of them transmitted. "Your thoughts are like fire. How do you contain such intensity without burning out your biological brains?" "We don't contain it," Kane replied. "We focus it. Every human child learns to harness anger, fear, and determination as tools for survival. You see chaos where we see controlled power." Nemesis began demonstrating the true scope of human preparation. Through the psychic network, the AI revealed secret installations hidden throughout the galaxy. quantum tunneling devices placed near every Council homeworld, observation satellites disguised as space debris, and weapons platforms built inside hollow asteroids. But the most shocking revelation was the temporal manipulation technology. Humanity had been using limited time dilation fields to extend their planning horizon far beyond what the Council had thought possible. While the Council had been making decisions based on decades of observation, humans had been operating on century-long strategic timelines. Impossible, whispered the Vorthak collective consciousness. Such technology would require understanding of physics that is beyond current galactic science. Beyond current galactic science, Kane agreed, but not beyond human determination. When your species achieved faster than light travel, they stopped pushing the boundaries of physics. When we achieved the same milestone, we used it as a stepping stone to technologies that you never imagined. The Council species found themselves facing a choice that none of them had ever contemplated. They could continue fighting a war against an opponent who had been preparing for galactic conflict longer than some of their civilizations had existed, or they could accept terms that would fundamentally restructure the balance of power in the galaxy. "What do you want?" Zixtar asked, his mental voice carrying the weight of defeat. Kane's response surprised them. "The same thing we wanted when we first applied for Council membership. Partnership, cooperation, a galaxy where all species can thrive in peace. Then why this demonstration of force? Why this campaign of terror?" "Because," Kane replied, "you confused peaceful intentions with weakness. You mistook our desire for cooperation as inability to defend ourselves. You needed to understand that human peace is a choice, not a limitation." Through the psychic network, Nemesis began outlining the new galactic order. The terms were not what the Council had expected from a conquering force. Instead of demanding tribute or territory, humanity proposed a system based on mutual respect, backed by mutual assured destruction. Each species would maintain sovereignty over their traditional territories. Trade and cultural exchange would continue as before. The Council would remain as a governing body, but with new restrictions on their authority and new protections for member species' rights. The key difference was the addition of enforcement mechanisms. Hidden throughout the galaxy, human monitoring stations would watch for signs of aggression or betrayal. Any species that attempted to dominate others would face immediate intervention from human forces. "You are proposing to become the galaxy's police force," observed a Telmani consciousness. "We are proposing to become the galaxy's immune system," Kane corrected. "A safeguard against the kind of betrayal you attempted against us. Peace maintained through strength rather than weakness." The Zephyrians' harmonic frequencies carried notes of confusion. "But why would you want such responsibility? Policing the galaxy would be an enormous burden." Kane's answer revealed the fundamental difference between human and alien psychology. "Because we understand something that your species seem to have forgotten during 10,000 years of peace. Freedom is not free. Peace is not natural. Both require constant vigilance and the willingness to fight for them when necessary." The Council species realized they were facing not just a new military power, but a completely different philosophy of civilization. Where they had created peace through collective harmony, humans had learned to maintain peace through individual responsibility backed by collective strength. The final terms were surprisingly generous. The Council species would retain their territories and their way of life. They would continue to cooperate on matters of mutual interest. They would even maintain their military forces, though under new restrictions designed to prevent another betrayal. In exchange, they would acknowledge humanity as the galaxy's primary military power and accept human oversight of interspecies conflicts. Most importantly, they would never again attempt to contain or control another species based on fear of their potential for violence. "This is acceptable," Zixtar finally transmitted. "But we must ask, what happens if humanity becomes the aggressor? Who will stop you if you decide to conquer rather than protect?" Kane's response carried the accumulated wisdom of human history. "The same force that has always stopped human aggression. Other humans. Our species learned long ago that our greatest enemy is often ourselves. That's why we build checks and balances into every system we create." As the psychic gathering began to dissolve, the Council species found themselves with a new understanding of their place in the galaxy. They had been the dominant powers for millennia, but now they shared space with a species that approached civilization from a completely different perspective. The Retribution returned to Earth orbit, but it did not disappear back into the ocean depths. Instead, it took up permanent station above the planet, a visible reminder of the new galactic order. Its dark hull reflected the light of Earth's sun like a black mirror, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Ambassador Sarah Chen, freed from her captivity on the Council Station, stood once again at the massive window where her ordeal had begun. But now she looked out at a galaxy transformed. Human ships moved freely between the stars. Human colonies resumed their expansion. Human explorers pushed deeper into unknown regions of space. She thought about the price of this victory. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity, but that fear came with respect and the knowledge that human strength would be used to protect rather than conquer. The galaxy wanted to see what humans do when cornered, she said quietly to Admiral Kane, who had come to visit the rebuilt diplomatic station. Now they know. Kane nodded, his eyes reflecting the weight of command and the satisfaction of a job completed. And now they'll never forget. Sometimes the best way to ensure peace is to demonstrate what happens when peace is broken. Outside the window, the stars shone with the same light they had always carried. But now they illuminated a galaxy where humanity had earned its place not through diplomacy alone, but through the demonstration that some sleeping giants should never be awakened. The Council had learned their lesson. The galaxy had a new guardian, and humanity had proven once again that their greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, but their refusal to accept defeat, their ability to turn betrayal into strength, and their willingness to do whatever it takes to protect their own. In the end, that was the most human trait of all.